The rain pounded against the windshield as we drove down the highway, the lights of Chicago just a blur in the distance. In a split second, everything changed. The car skidded, tires screeching as we spun out of control. I don't remember screaming, just the sound of metal twisting and glass shattering. When we finally stopped, Adam lay unconscious beside me, blood running down his face. In the chaos, I didn't think, I just acted. I fought against the seatbelt, pulling myself free and dragging Adam out of the wreckage. My hands trembled as I checked his pulse, barely there. I had never been so scared in my life, but I was determined. I saved his life that night, holding on to the belief that this moment of love and sacrifice would bring us closer together. But I was wrong. I saved his life, but little did I know, it wasn't me he would be grateful to. As the paramedics arrived, my heart pounded with a mixture of relief and terror. Adam was rushed away on a stretcher, unconscious and broken. His life now hung by a thread, and all I could do was pray that he would survive. I believed, in that moment, that our bond would be stronger than ever. But the accident was only the beginning of a much bigger heartbreak. Before the accident, my life with Adam felt like something out of a love story. We lived in a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago, where life moved at a slower, more peaceful pace. Adam and I met at a mutual friend's barbecue 2 years ago, and from the moment we started talking, I knew there was something special between us. Adam was charming, kind, and always seemed to know the right thing to say. Our relationship grew quickly, and soon we were inseparable. We spent weekends having picnics by Lake Michigan, laughing and talking about everything from our careers to our dreams for the future. We planned to buy a house together, start a family, and build a life that felt like something straight out of a dream. I believed with all my heart that Adam was the one. He made me feel like I was the center of his world. He would surprise me with small gifts, a bouquet of flowers, a handwritten note slipped into my purse. Every little gesture felt like confirmation that we were meant to be. I could already picture our wedding day, our future children, and growing old together in the house we had started looking for. But looking back, I can now see that the cracks were already starting to show, even before the accident. Adam had started working longer hours at the law firm, and though he assured me it was just temporary, I noticed the change in him. He became more distant, often distracted by his phone or lost in his own thoughts. Our conversations, which had once been effortless, now felt strained. Sometimes he would zone out while I was talking, only to snap back with an apologetic smile and a vague excuse about work stress. I didn't want to see the signs. I convinced myself it was just a rough patch, that we would get through it. I ignored the growing emotional gap between us, telling myself that once his work settled down, things would go back to the way they were. I believed that love, our love, could overcome anything. I had to believe it. But the distance only seemed to grow. Adam was no longer the man who planned spontaneous weekends away, or surprised me with thoughtful gestures. Instead, he seemed more and more focused on his own world, a world I felt increasingly excluded from. But I held on, clinging to the memories of what we once had, determined to get us back on track. That day, the day of the accident, felt like a turning point. We had planned to go out for a drive, something simple, something to reconnect. I hoped it would give us a chance to talk, to rebuild what had started to fray between us. But instead of bringing us closer, that drive would change everything in ways I never saw coming. The accident tore through our lives in an instant, but the emotional wreckage had been building long before. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The rain started coming down harder as we drove along the highway, the rhythmic tapping of the drops on the windshield almost hypnotic. I glanced over at Adam, who was staring out the window, his expression distant. I wanted to reach out to him, to talk, but the words seemed to get stuck in my throat. The distance between us, both literal and emotional, felt heavier that night. It happened so fast. One moment, we were cruising along, and the next, the car skidded on the slick road. The tires squealed as I tried to regain control, but it was too late. The car spun violently, the world outside becoming a blur of lights and rain. My heart raced, a mix of panic and disbelief setting in as we veered off the road. Then, the crash. The impact hit with a bone-jarring force. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and for a few horrifying moments, everything felt like it was in slow motion. I remember the sound, like an explosion, as the car slammed into something hard. Then, silence. I blinked, disoriented, my body aching from the collision. The airbag had deployed, the smell of smoke and burnt rubber filling my lungs. I looked over at Adam, panic setting in as I saw him slumped against the passenger seat, unconscious, blood trickling down his face. "Adam!" I screamed, shaking him, but he didn't respond. Adrenaline surged through me as I struggled to unbuckle my seatbelt. My hands shook violently, every second feeling like an eternity. I had to get him out. I had to save him. I managed to free myself, then crawled over to Adam. His breathing was shallow, his face pale. I pulled at his seatbelt, yanking it free, and tried to open the door, but it was jammed from the impact. Desperation fueled me. I kicked at the door, again and again, until finally, it gave way. The rain poured down on us, the cold air biting at my skin, but I barely noticed. All that mattered was getting Adam out. I grabbed him by the arms, pulling with everything I had, my muscles straining as I dragged him from the wreckage. We collapsed onto the wet ground, the sound of approaching sirens echoing in the distance. My heart was pounding in my ears, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. I checked his pulse, weak, but there. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by fear. Was it enough? Would he survive? The seconds stretched into what felt like hours as we lay there, me cradling Adam's head in my lap, the rain mixing with the blood on his face. I whispered to him, begging him to hold on. "Please, Adam, you're going to be okay. I'm right here." The ambulance arrived just as I thought I couldn't bear the weight any longer. Paramedics rushed toward us, taking over as I watched in a daze. I couldn't stop trembling, my body shaking from both the cold and the shock. They lifted Adam onto a stretcher, his unconscious form so still it terrified me. "He's going to be okay, right?" I asked one of the paramedics, my voice barely a whisper. They didn't answer, just hurriedly loaded him into the ambulance. I followed, my legs weak beneath me, but my heart strong with determination. I had saved him. I had pulled him from that wreckage, and I would see this through. He had to be okay. The ambulance raced toward the hospital, the lights flashing as we tore through the city streets. I sat next to Adam, watching him breathe in short, shallow gasps. My hands clutched at his, my mind running through 100 scenarios of what might happen next. As we arrived at the hospital, they rushed him into the ER, leaving me standing in the hallway, soaked to the bone and shaking with fear. But amid all the terror, one thought kept me going. I had saved him. No matter what came next, I had saved Adam's life, and that, I thought, would bind us forever. Adam came home from the hospital, but something felt different. At first, I thought it was just the after effects of the accident, the trauma, the surgeries, the pain. He was quieter, more distant. The man who had once leaned on me for everything now seemed closed off, as though he was drifting into his own world. I tried to chalk it up to his recovery. I took care of him, made him his favorite meals, sat by his side as he rested. But the more time passed, the more I noticed his indifference. When I'd ask him how he was feeling, his responses were curt and dismissive, as if my presence no longer mattered. I told myself that he was just tired, that the emotional toll of the accident was weighing on him. But deep down, I knew something had changed. What really bothered me was how often Adam wanted to go back to the hospital for his follow-up appointments. It was normal, of course, that he needed checkups, but the frequency seemed excessive. He would go on his own most of the time, insisting he didn't want to burden me with the trip. But I began to notice how energized he seemed when he came back, how he spoke of Laura, the nurse, with more warmth than he ever did with me these days. She's just being nice, I'd tell myself, trying to push down the nagging feeling that something was wrong. She's his nurse, it's her job to care. But the way Adam lit up when he mentioned her, it was more than just gratitude. It was something I hadn't seen from him in months, before the accident even. It was as if Laura had stepped into the role I used to have, the one who brought him comfort, the one who mattered most. I finally worked up the nerve to confront Adam one night after dinner. He had been quiet again, barely touching his food, and I couldn't take the silence anymore. "Adam, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. He looked up, his face blank. "About what?" "I don't know. About us? About how things feel different? You've been distant since you got home. You barely talk to me anymore, and you spend so much time at the hospital." I trailed off, unsure how to phrase what I really wanted to say. "I feel like something's going on." Adam frowned, pushing his plate away. "What are you talking about? I'm recovering from a car crash. Of course things feel different. It's not like I'm going to bounce back right away." "I know that," I replied softly. "But it's not just that. I feel like you're pulling away from me. Like you'd rather be at the hospital. With Laura." At the mention of Laura's name, Adam stiffened. His jaw tightened as he shook his head. "You're being paranoid. Laura's my nurse, that's it. She's just doing her job." "I know she is, but it's the way you talk about her. It's like you're closer to her than you are to me." Adam stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're overreacting. I'm trying to heal, and now you're accusing me of what? Cheating? It's just medical care." I looked down, feeling ashamed for even bringing it up. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the stress of everything was clouding my judgment. "I'm sorry. I just feel like I'm losing you." Adam sighed and rubbed his face. "You're not losing me. I'm just trying to get better." But despite his words, I could feel the growing distance between us. As the days passed, Adam spent more and more time at the hospital, each visit leaving me lonelier and more confused. I didn't know what to believe anymore, but I couldn't shake the feeling that things were slipping out of my control. I had been planning it for days. Adam's follow-up appointment was just routine, but I thought surprising him at the hospital would bring a smile to his face. Maybe it would remind him of what we had, of the love that was once so strong between us. I knew things had been tense, but I was determined to make things better, to fight for us. I arrived at the hospital that afternoon, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. As I walked through the familiar halls, the sterile smell of disinfectant filled the air. I made my way to the exam room where Adam's checkup was scheduled, hoping to catch him off guard with my presence. But as I got closer, I heard voices, Adam's voice and someone else's. It was Laura. I slowed my steps, a strange sense of dread washing over me. I told myself it was nothing, that they were probably just talking about his treatment. But something in the tone of their voices made me stop. I stepped closer, my heart racing as I listened. "I don't know what to do." Adam's voice was low, filled with hesitation. "I've been feeling this way for a while now." "I feel it too," Laura replied softly. "I don't know if we can keep pretending." There was a brief silence, the kind that spoke louder than words ever could. And then I heard it, a quiet, intimate moment, the sound of a kiss. My stomach dropped. The world around me seemed to crumble as I pressed my hand against the wall for support. I could hardly breathe. My mind screamed for me to walk away, to stop listening, but my feet wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, the weight of their betrayal crashing down on me like a wave. How could this happen? I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. How could Adam do this to me, after everything we had been through? I wanted to burst into the room, to demand answers, but my legs felt weak, and my heart was breaking into pieces with every word I overheard. I had saved his life. I had been there, by his side, through it all. And yet, here he was, confessing his feelings to another woman, to the nurse who had taken over my place in his heart. My mind raced with memories. How Laura had lingered at Adam's bedside, how she had smiled at him with that soft, understanding look. I had brushed it off, told myself I was being paranoid. But now, it was all so clear. She hadn't just treated him, she had taken him from me. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually, I found the strength to walk away. I turned around, feeling the sting of hot tears in my eyes, my heart heavy with the crushing realization that I had lost him. Before I could make it to the exit, I heard footsteps behind me. Wait! It was Adam. I didn't stop. Please, he called out, catching up to me. It's not what you think. I spun around, unable to hold back the flood of emotions. Not what I think? I heard everything, Adam. You kissed her. He looked down, guilt etched across his face. I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you, but I feel something for her, something I can't ignore. His words cut through me like a knife. So that's it? After everything we've been through, you just move on? With her? Adam's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't want it to end like this. I shook my head, too hurt to respond. I couldn't stand to hear any more. Without another word, I stormed out of the hospital, leaving Adam behind. The weight of the betrayal was too much to bear. Back at the apartment, I sat in silence, the events of the hospital replaying in my mind like a broken record. The door creaked open, and Adam stepped inside, his face a mix of regret and confusion. He stood there, hesitating for a moment before speaking. We need to talk, he said, his voice low and unsure. I looked up at him, my heart still heavy with the weight of everything I had overheard. Talk about what, Adam? About how you betrayed me with her? He sighed, running his hands through his hair. It's not that simple. I never wanted this to happen. I'm confused, okay? I still care about you, but I feel something for Laura. I don't know how to explain it. I stood up, anger bubbling to the surface. Confused? You feel something for her? Adam, I saved your life. I was there for you through everything, and this is how you repay me? I didn't plan this, he said defensively. It just happened. I don't know what to do. I let out a bitter laugh, my heart breaking all over again. You don't know what to do? I'll tell you what to do, Adam. You stop pretending that what you've done is forgivable. You stop acting like this is something that just happened. You betrayed me. You betrayed us. His face softened as if he was finally starting to understand the depth of my pain. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. That's the thing, I said, my voice growing stronger. You didn't mean to hurt me, but you did it anyway. I was the one by your side fighting for you. I was the one who pulled you out of that car, thinking that it would bind us together. And all this time, you were falling for someone else? How dare you ask for time to figure things out? What is there to figure out? I don't know what's happening, Adam repeated, his voice shaky. I feel so lost. I shook my head, my chest tight with frustration. You're not lost, Adam. You're selfish. You've been selfish from the moment you started feeling something for her and didn't tell me. You could have ended this before it went too far, but you didn't. You let me believe that we still had a chance, that we were still in this together, but you weren't. You were with her. He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't done. Do you know what it feels like to save someone's life? To give everything you have, thinking it will be enough? I did that for you. I thought I saved you, Adam, but I didn't. I didn't save you because the person I loved isn't even here anymore. Adam stepped closer, reaching out as if to comfort me, but I pulled away. Don't, I warned, my voice steady. Don't you dare try to make this okay. You've made your choice. He stood there, defeated, unable to argue. I didn't want it to end like this. I met his gaze, tears burning my eyes. Neither did I. For a moment, we just stood there in silence. The tension between us hung heavy in the air, thick with the weight of everything that had been left unsaid for too long. There were no more excuses, no more apologies. The damage was done. Adam finally turned toward the door, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'm sorry," he whispered one last time before walking out, leaving me standing there, the echo of his words lingering in the now empty room. As the door clicked shut, I felt a strange mixture of loss and empowerment. I had loved him deeply, but I had also saved myself. I wasn't going to let his betrayal define me. I deserved better than someone who was confused about his feelings after everything I had sacrificed for him. I wiped the tears from my face, standing tall in the quiet of the apartment. Adam was gone, and for the first time, I realized I was better off without him. The wind off Lake Michigan was cool and gentle, rustling through the leaves as I sat by the water, staring out at the endless expanse of blue. There was something calming about the way the lake stretched out toward the horizon, reminding me that the world was so much bigger than the pain I had been holding on to. In the days since Adam had left, I'd had time to reflect. The heartbreak was real. It cut deeper than I could have imagined. But somehow, I felt lighter now. The weight of trying to fix something that was already broken had been lifted. I didn't need him or anyone else to define my worth. I realized that now. I thought about everything I had gone through, saving Adam from that wreckage, nursing him through his recovery, only to lose him to someone else. There had been so much pain, but there was strength in that pain too. I had given him everything I had, but now it was time to give that love back to myself. As I watched the waves lap gently against the shore, I let go of the anger, the betrayal. I no longer needed to carry that with me. I had saved Adam's life, but the most important thing was that I had saved myself in the end. I had walked away from someone who didn't deserve me, and in doing so, I had found a new kind of power. For the first time in what felt like ages, I smiled. It wasn't a smile for anyone else, just for me. A quiet acknowledgement of everything I had survived and the person I had become because of it. I no longer needed Adam's love, nor did I need validation from anyone. I was enough. I was strong. I was free. Standing up, I took one last look at the lake, feeling the wind lift my hair. A new chapter was waiting for me, full of endless possibilities. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready to embrace it, on my own terms. With the sun setting on the horizon, casting the water in shades of gold and orange, I turned away from the lake and walked forward, leaving the past behind me, fully ready for whatever came next.